It was a gray February morning when I first realized something was wrong. I was standing outside the Charleston Police Department, staring at the entrance like it was the mouth of some dark tunnel I didn't want to go through. People moved in and out, an old man with a cane, a teenage boy with headphones, a mother dragging her crying toddler. But I stood still, clutching my coat like it could hold me together. 2 weeks had passed since the accident, since Gregory, since the call that shattered everything. Now I was here to collect the last things he ever touched. He always said I took too long to make decisions. You can stand outside a store for 30 minutes before deciding whether to go in, he used to joke, nudging me playfully. His voice still echoed in my mind, clear and warm and familiar, but it only made the silence deeper now. I finally stepped through the doors. The building smelled like paper, cheap coffee, and something metallic I couldn't name. A tired-looking woman behind the glass partition raised her eyes. "I'm Lena Whitmore," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You called me about my husband's belongings." She nodded without a word, scribbled something in a ledger, and told me, "The detective will be with you shortly. Please have a seat." I sat down on a cold wooden bench, locking my fingers together tightly. My hands were shaking, my eyes fixed on the tile floor, gray with specks of black, like pepper scattered across cement. Gregory always teased me about that too. "You study floors when you're nervous," he'd say. "Looking for answers from the ground, Whitmore." I didn't answer. Not then. Not now. The floor said nothing. "Mrs. Whitmore." I looked up. A man in his 40s with a wrinkled suit and kind but exhausted eyes stood at the hallway. "Detective Peters," he said, offering a small nod. "Let's talk in my office." The room was cluttered, files stacked high, walls covered in posters about road safety and photos of crumpled vehicles that looked too much like the one Gregory had been in. My stomach turned. The detective noticed. "Sorry about the decor," he muttered, moving one folder aside. "Not the best atmosphere, I know." He gestured to a chair. "Have a seat. I just need your signature for the release of your husband's personal effects." He slid a paper toward me. I didn't read it. I signed. Then he handed me a clear plastic evidence bag. Inside, Gregory's phone with a cracked case, his worn leather wallet, a pack of mint gum, a lighter. Odd, since he quit smoking 2 years ago, and a heavy keyring. I held the bag to my chest like it was him, like if I pressed hard enough, maybe I could feel his heartbeat through the plastic. "Again, I'm so sorry for your loss," the detective said quietly. "If you need anything, don't hesitate." I nodded and left without another word. Outside, the cold hit me harder than I expected. My hands were trembling so badly I couldn't get the key into the car door. I finally managed and tossed the bag onto the passenger seat. It sat there like silent accusation. The drive home was a blur of traffic lights and tears I didn't let fall. Back in the kitchen, I made tea, not because I wanted to drink it, but because doing something, anything, felt better than drowning in silence. Then, finally, I opened the bag. One by one, I laid everything out. Phone, wallet, gum, lighter, keys. Too many keys. And 2 of them I had never seen before. One was small, like a mailbox key. The other was larger, unusually shaped, with jagged notches that looked like puzzle pieces. A plastic tag dangled from the ring, faded and scratched, but the number was still readable, 47. My heart started to beat faster. I couldn't explain why, but those keys didn't feel random. They felt like a door into a life I didn't know my husband had lived. I stared at the keys on the table, my tea going cold beside me. I didn't touch them at first. I just sat there, hands in my lap, heart thudding like it was trying to escape my chest. Those 2 keys didn't belong. I knew every lock in our lives, our house, the car, the garage, even the cabin up at Lake Moultrie his parents used to own before they sold it. But these were strangers. And yet, they had been in his pocket the night he died. I picked them up slowly, letting the metal rest in my palm. The small one looked like something for a mailbox, maybe an old one from an apartment. The larger one was heavier, thick and odd with angular teeth. Not something you found in a typical suburban lock. And then there was the plastic tag. 47. I whispered the number out loud like it might answer back. 47. Gregory worked in construction engineering. Maybe it was for a site, but he already had a work key card. Plain corporate and plastic. These were personal. Carried close. The way you carry something important or something you don't want to explain. The kettle hissed behind me. I had forgotten I turned it back on. I poured myself a new cup and sat by the window, watching the wind stir the trees. The sky hung low, gray and swollen, just like my chest. I hadn't slept properly since the accident. Every night I lay awake, waiting for the sound of his key in the lock, the weight of his footsteps in the hallway, the brush of his hand against my back in bed. And every night, nothing. That night 2 weeks ago, I had waited for him longer than usual. Midnight passed, and I finally called his phone. No answer. Just voicemail. I told myself maybe he was stuck at a late site or fell asleep in his truck. But deep down, I'd known something was wrong. I'd felt it. The call from the hospital came at 2:14 a.m. A flat voice. An accident on the bypass. He died instantly. They said that part like it was supposed to be a comfort. I clutched the keys tighter. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a name that made my stomach knot. Rachel Monroe. My best friend. Or, at least, that's what I'd thought for the last 7 years. "Hey," I said, trying to sound normal. "Lena, sweetheart, how are you?" Her voice was soft, filled with that kind of concern that sounded a little too careful. "I just got back from the station," I said. "Gregory's things." "Oh, God, I'm so sorry. That must have been awful." She hesitated, then added, "Listen, do you want to meet up? Just for a bit? I just picked Addie up from school and thought maybe it'd be good for you not to be alone." I looked at the clock. It was already past 3. The day had slipped away. "Sure," I said. "The usual place?" "Of course," Rachel replied. "I'll see you in 30. I hung up and stared at the keys one more time before slipping them into my purse. Something in me needed to carry them now. I didn't know why, but they felt unfinished. The cafe was only a few blocks from my house. Cozy, small-town southern charm, with soft lighting and antique furniture no one actually wanted to sit on for too long. When I walked in, I spotted Rachel by the window table. Our table. Addie was with her, glued to a tablet, legs swinging off the seat. "Hi, Auntie Lena," she chirped without looking up. "Hey, sunshine," I said, managing a smile. Rachel stood and hugged me. She smelled like the same vanilla lavender lotion she always wore, but something about it made me shiver. "You've lost weight," she said, concern etched into her brow. "You need to eat." "I'm trying," I lied. We ordered coffee, cake for her, and orange juice for Addie. Rachel leaned in. "How are you, really?" I shrugged. Some moments I feel like I understand he's gone. Others, I'm still listening for his footsteps. Rachel reached out and squeezed my hand, her touch warm. "That's normal. You loved him. It takes time." I nodded, and before I could stop myself, I reached into my purse. "These were in his pocket," I said, placing the keyring gently on the table. "All the others I know, except these 2. Look." She froze for half a breath. Just half, but I saw it, a flicker in her eyes, a tightening around her mouth. Then she picked them up, and her hand trembled. Rachel examined the keys in silence, turning them slowly in her hand. The large one caught the light. It really did look strange, like it belonged in some old, industrial door no one used anymore. The small one dangled beneath it, almost forgettable in comparison. Rachel cleared her throat. "No idea," she said too quickly, her voice a little too high. "Maybe from a project site? Didn't Greg work all over town?" I shook my head. He had a badge for the sites and a set of work keys. "These aren't them." She placed the keys back on the table and reached for her coffee, both hands wrapped tight around the cup. Her fingers trembled just slightly, like they were trying to hold something in that was already slipping out. "You shouldn't dwell on this, Lena," she said gently. "You've been through enough. Who knows what men carry in their pockets? A spare key for a storage unit, maybe? A lock he meant to get rid of, but forgot? It could be anything." Her tone was soft, too soft. I tilted my head. "Are you okay?" "Me? Of course." She forced a smile. "I just hate seeing you like this." Addie piped up from the tablet. "Mom, can I go play the claw machine?" Rachel nodded without turning. "Go ahead, baby. Stay where I can see you." Addie hopped down and ran toward the glowing arcade games in the back corner. Rachel fumbled for her purse. "Shoot, I don't think I have change." She opened her bag and dumped the contents onto the table. Wallet, lipstick, tissues, keys, and there they were. My heart stopped. The same keys. Identical. Same small mailbox key. Same odd, big one. Same worn plastic tag with the number 47. I couldn't breathe. "Rachel," I whispered. She looked up. "Where did you get those?" Her eyes widened, just for a second. Then she laughed, nervous, forced. "Oh, these? No, they're not the same. You're just imagining. All keys look the same when you're upset." "No," I said. "They don't." I leaned in, my voice low and steady. "They're exactly the same, Rachel. Right down to the scratches on the tag." Rachel flushed. She began scooping everything back into her purse like it was burning her hands. "You're overthinking," she said. "Grief messes with your head. You're looking for something that isn't there." But her voice cracked on the last word. I sat back, heart pounding. My fingers curled into the fabric of my coat. "Why would Gregory have the same keys as you?" I asked. "I don't know," she snapped, then added more softly, "Maybe he found them and never returned them." I didn't say anything. I just looked at her. She stood up. "I should go get Addie. We have to leave soon anyway." "I thought you said you had time." "Plans changed." She turned away quickly and headed for the games. I watched her go, watched the stiffness in her shoulders, the way she reached for her daughter with hands that shook more now than before. Something inside me had begun to unravel. She came back with Addie, who pouted. I didn't get to finish my turn. "Next time, baby," Rachel said, her smile tight. She turned to me. "I'll call you later, okay?" I didn't answer. "Take care of yourself," she said. "Really?" Then she left, one hand on Addie's shoulder, the other gripping the purse like it held her together. I sat there long after the door closed behind them, staring at the keys on the table, my heart cold in my chest. Identical. They were identical, and I no longer believed it was just a coincidence. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept replaying the moment her purse spilled open, the way her face changed when she saw the keys on the table, how her fingers trembled when she scooped them back in, like they were evidence she hadn't meant to show. I knew Rachel, or at least I thought I did. We'd been best friends since that ESL class 7 years ago, the one we both dropped out of when life got busy and babies didn't come the way we planned. She was there when Gregory proposed. She helped pick out the dress I never wore because we opted for a quiet ceremony in the courthouse. She brought lasagna the week I had the flu and flowers when I lost my father. She was the one person I trusted enough to cry in front of. But that look in her eyes, that wasn't grief. That wasn't concern. That was panic. And panic didn't lie. The next morning, she came to my apartment unannounced. She brought a paper bag that smelled like butter and cinnamon. "I made muffins," she said softly, standing in the doorway with red-rimmed eyes and a forced smile. I let her in. I didn't trust her, but I wanted to see how far she'd go to keep lying. In the kitchen, she sat at the table, cupping her coffee like it might shield her from what she knew was coming. "About yesterday," she started. I said nothing. "I'm sorry if I seemed off. Seeing you like that, it rattled me. I didn't want you to spiral. so I probably sounded defensive. Probably, I said, my voice flat. She laughed nervously. Okay, definitely. I leaned forward, looking her dead in the eyes. Rachel, those keys you dropped, they were the same. The exact same. She blinked fast. No, they weren't. Don't lie. I'm not. Yes, you are. She swallowed. Lena, honey, you're grieving. I know how sharp everything feels right now, but you're making something out of nothing. I waited, then asked, can I see your keys again? She reached for her purse, then froze. Oh, I forgot them. I left them at my neighbor's. She waters my plants when I'm away. That wasn't just a lie. That was a prepared lie. I folded my arms. So, how did you get into your building this morning? She looked away. The building has a code. You know that. And your unit? I didn't lock it last night. I let the silence hang. She fidgeted. Look, I don't know what you're trying to prove. But I'm not trying to prove anything, Rachel. I'm just trying to understand why my husband had keys that match yours. I'm trying to understand why you're lying. Her face twisted. For a second, I thought she might tell me. Might say the words and get it over with. But instead, she stood up. I have to pick Addie up. She has a doctor's appointment. It's 11 in the morning. She grabbed her coat. It's a pediatric thing. Routine. They're backed up, so we had to go early. She didn't look at me as she left. Just mumbled, I hope you get some rest, okay? And closed the door behind her. I stood in the silence, the bag of muffins untouched on the counter. I looked around my apartment, the framed photos, the throw blanket Gregory always pulled over my feet, the coffee mug he chipped but refused to throw out, and felt it all start to rot. Rachel was lying. That much I knew. The question was, what exactly had she been hiding with those keys? I didn't want to break into anyone's home. I wasn't that kind of person. I was the type who double-checked locks, returned grocery carts, and said bless you to strangers who sneezed. But by Thursday morning, something inside me had changed. Rachel had called just after sunrise. Her voice was rushed and unusually distant. She said her mother had slipped and broken her leg, that she was taking Addie to stay with her for a few days. I'll be out of town, she said. Probably until Sunday. Just wanted you to know. And then, without waiting for a response, she hung up. I stared at my phone. She was leaving the city. The apartment, if the keys fit, would be empty. And I had the keys. I tried to talk myself out of it, pacing the kitchen, drinking half a cup of coffee that went cold in my hands. I told myself it was a violation, an overreaction, a mistake. But another voice, the one that had been whispering to me since the accident, was louder now. You need to know. By 10, I was parked outside a generic brick building in North Charleston, a place I had only seen once, briefly, in the corner of a forgotten address book Gregory kept in his drawer. Unit 47. I walked up to the third floor. The hallway smelled faintly of dust and old dryer sheets. I stood in front of the door, heart pounding so hard it felt like my ribs might crack. I took out the keyring, inserted the small key into the top lock. It turned effortlessly. The large one slid into the bottom lock like it had done it 100 times before. The door opened. The scent hit me first, soft floral perfume I had smelled 1,000 times on Rachel's sweaters, and beneath it, something unmistakable. The warm, masculine trace of Gregory's cologne. I stepped inside slowly, as if the floor might vanish beneath me. The apartment was modest, clean, cozy. There were toys on the shelf, a small pink backpack hanging from a hook by the door, a pair of child sneakers beside a man's worn leather shoes. On the living room wall, framed photos stared back at me. Rachel, Gregory, Addie. In one, Gregory had his arm around Rachel's waist, his head tilted slightly toward her like he always did with me. In another, he was kneeling beside Addie at a birthday party, lighting the candles on a cake. They were smiling, all three of them, and not the awkward, forced kind of smiles you fake for pictures. No, these were happy. I moved through the apartment like a ghost. In the bedroom, there was a tall dresser. Inside were his shirts, folded the way I used to fold them. His cologne bottle sat on the nightstand half full. I opened the closet and my breath caught. His jacket, the navy one I gave him for our anniversary. He told me he lost it. I walked into the bathroom. A toothbrush, his razor, a bottle of shaving cream, the same brand he'd always used at home. This wasn't a place he visited. He lived here. He had a life here. A second life. I sat down on the edge of the bed, barely breathing. The sheets smelled like both of them, Rachel and Gregory. On the nightstand, tucked into a small basket, was a drawing. Crayons on construction paper, Addie's handwriting. Me and Mommy and Daddy. 3 stick figures beneath a bright yellow sun. I ran my finger over the words, over the childish lines, and then I realized the handwriting was clumsy, with some letters backward, like the birthday card she gave me last year. She must have been 5, maybe 6. She wasn't just calling him Gregory. She was calling him Daddy. I don't remember how long I sat there, staring at that drawing. It was so innocent, so cheerful, everything my heart wasn't. My hands were numb, my breath shallow. I was sitting in a life that had no room for me. A life Gregory built without me. I stood up slowly, as if moving too fast might wake the nightmare. On the fridge were more drawings, snapshots of moments I never knew happened. Gregory teaching Addie to ride a bike. Gregory cooking. Gregory laughing. All in this apartment. All with Rachel and Addie. Back in the bedroom, I opened the drawer next to the bed and found a stack of documents. Most of it was mundane, receipts, bills, old grocery lists. But beneath it all was a manila envelope. Inside, a DNA test. My vision blurred as I read the words. Probability of paternity. 99.9% Gregory was Addie's father. I staggered back a step, gripping the dresser for balance. Dennis had mentioned it once, just in passing, that Gregory had seemed distracted lately. Said he was acting strange, pulling away from people, even him. I had brushed it off as stress. I didn't want to see what was in front of me, but it was here now, undeniable. I placed the envelope back exactly where I found it. I didn't need it. The truth was heavy enough without proof. As I stepped back into the living room, the front door handle rattled. My chest seized. I had forgotten. Rachel said she was leaving this morning, but maybe something had changed. I didn't have time to run. The hallway was too long. There was nowhere to hide. The door opened. Addie's voice echoed first. "Mom, I forgot Mr. Bunny." Rachel followed, close behind. "Quick, baby, grab it. We're already running late." She saw me but said nothing yet. Instead, she spoke over her shoulder, more to herself than to me. We barely made it out of town before Addie realized Mr. Bunny was gone. She wouldn't stop crying. We had to turn back. She stepped into the apartment and froze. We locked eyes. Her face turned to stone. "Lena," she said, her voice brittle. "What are you doing here?" I didn't flinch. "You tell me." Her eyes dropped to the keys dangling from my fingers. "I used his," I said, answering the question she didn't dare ask. "The ones you said didn't exist." Addie spotted me and beamed. "Hi, Auntie Lena. What are you doing here?" Rachel's voice cracked. "Sweetheart, go wait in the hallway for a second, okay?" But now Addie. The child's footsteps padded down the hallway. Rachel shut the door behind her, then turned back to me. "I didn't want you to find out like this." "Then maybe you shouldn't have lied." Her mouth opened, closed. I stepped forward, pulled the drawing from a nightstand, and held it up. "She calls him Daddy, and wasn't he?" Rachel swallowed hard. "Yes." "For how long?" She dropped onto the couch like her legs had given out. "It's been about 2 years." 2 years, I repeated, my voice dull. 2 years he lived here with you. With her. She nodded slowly, avoiding my eyes. It started after his promotion. That was 2 years ago. He said he needed a place to clear his head, and then he just stayed. I didn't plan for this, Lena. No one does. But you stayed. I didn't think you'd understand. You were his wife, and you were supposed to be my friend. I still am. I laughed once, short and sharp. No, you're not. Not after this. She looked up at me, tears welling. I loved him. I didn't blink. So did I. She wiped at her face. It just happened. We never meant for it to go this far. You mean for him to raise a second family while he told me he was working late? Rachel said nothing. I looked around once more. At the cozy home, the framed pictures, the life. I hope it was worth it, I said. And then I walked out past Daddy in the hallway, her small face confused and hopeful. Will you come over again soon? She asked. I paused, forcing a smile. No, baby, I whispered. I won't. The air outside felt heavier than when I'd walked in. Maybe it was the weight of truth settling on my shoulders. Maybe it was just Charleston humidity creeping in ahead of the afternoon rain. Either way, my legs moved on their own, carrying me to my car, but my mind was still trapped in that apartment. Among Gregory's clothes, Addie's drawings, and Rachel's lies. I sat behind the wheel for a long time, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. A message from James, Gregory's older brother. Hey, just checking in. You doing okay? I didn't respond right away. I just stared at the message, then finally typed, I need to talk. Can we meet? He called almost instantly. Where are you? I told him. We agreed on the park near my building. 20 minutes later, we were walking the path near the duck pond like we used to do every holiday when Gregory was still alive and pretending to be a husband. James glanced sideways at me. You look pale. I've had better mornings. I figured. He paused. Rachel called me. Of course she did. Said you found out. I found everything, I said. The apartment, the pictures, the DNA test. He exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. I'm sorry. How long have you known? I asked. James hesitated. That was enough of an answer. 6 months, he admitted. Maybe a little more. I stopped walking. 6 months? And you said nothing. He turned to me, his expression tight. What was I supposed to say, Lena? Hey, your husband's got a whole second life with your best friend. Surprise? Yes, I snapped. That's exactly what you were supposed to say. He winced. I didn't want to hurt you. And he didn't want to hurt me either, right? That's why he lied. That's why he tucked his toothbrush into her bathroom drawer and told me he was working overtime. James looked genuinely pained. It was wrong. I told him that. I told him he couldn't live like that. But he did. Yes. And you let him. James didn't answer. We sat on a bench overlooking the pond. Ducks glided across the water, totally unaware of how messy human lives could get. Did he ever say he was going to leave me? I asked. No. He said he couldn't choose. That he loved you both. I laughed under my breath. You can't love two people and lie to both of them. I think he convinced himself he wasn't lying, James said quietly. He said he felt safe with you, grounded, and with Rachel he felt alive. I stared at the water. So I was the foundation. She was the thrill. I don't think it was that simple. It never is, but it always ends the same. James turned toward me. Lena, I know I should have told you. I carry that guilt. But you deserve to hear this. He did love you. In his way. Deeply. But he was weak. And selfish. And scared. I didn't answer. I just don't want this to ruin you, he added. You're strong. Don't let this turn you bitter. I nodded slowly. I won't. But I also won't pretend this didn't happen. He looked relieved. Good. That's good. I stood up. Thank you for meeting me. He got to his feet too. "If you ever need anything," I gave him a tired smile, "I'll let you know." As I walked back to my car, I realized something strange. The betrayal didn't feel like fire anymore. It felt like ice, sharp, clean, and final. Gregory was dead, but the lies he left behind, they were still very much alive. I didn't go home right away. I drove aimlessly through the city for almost an hour, letting the turns decide for me. Streets blurred into each other. Memories clung to every corner. Gregory had taken me to that diner once after a long workday. We'd laughed over burnt coffee and greasy fries. That bookstore, he bought me a poetry collection there just because the cover reminded him of my eyes. None of it felt real anymore. When I finally walked through my front door, the silence wasn't comforting. It was accusing. This apartment used to be our sanctuary. Now it was a museum of half-truths. His shoes by the door. His coat still hanging in the hallway. The cologne bottle on the dresser, half empty, like he might return to finish it. I stood in the living room for a long time, staring at our wedding photo on the wall. He was smiling at me like I was the only person in the world. That same smile he gave Addie when lighting her birthday candles. That same smile Rachel said he used when reading bedtime stories. How many versions of Gregory had there been? How many lies had I called love? I grabbed a box from the hallway closet and started packing. Not out of rage, not even sadness, just necessity. I couldn't breathe with his things everywhere. Shirts, ties, cufflinks. The socks I used to fold with care. The t-shirts I'd stolen to sleep in when he was away. One of them still smelled like him, and I almost dropped it. Almost. I taped the first box shut, then another, and another. Around 6, I called James again. "Can you help me take some of Gregory's things to your parents' house?" He showed up an hour later, no questions asked. As we loaded boxes into his trunk, he asked gently, "What are you going to do now?" I thought for a moment. "I'm going to live. For real this time. For myself." James smiled. "That sounds like the best thing you could do." That night, I sat on the balcony, legs tucked under a blanket, a glass of wine in my hand. The city lights shimmered below me. Somewhere, children were laughing. Somewhere, someone was telling the truth. I pulled out my notebook, one I hadn't touched since before Gregory died, and flipped to a blank page. At the top, I wrote, "My life from now on." Then I started a list. 1. Sell the apartment. 2. Move to a place with more light. 3. Take that Italian class I always put off. 4. Travel alone, anywhere, everywhere. 5. Learn to cook something that takes hours, just because I can. 6. Stop asking permission to be happy. I didn't cry that night, not even once. The pain was still there, yes, but it had a shape now. It had boundaries. And most importantly, it no longer controlled me. Around midnight, my phone lit up with a message. From Rachel. "I know you don't want to hear from me, but Addie keeps asking about you. I told her you're busy. She said she misses you." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I turned it off. Not out of cruelty, out of survival. Because if I answered now, I'd lose myself again. And I had just begun to remember who I was. 1 year later, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment on the east side of Charleston. It wasn't large, but it was mine. The walls were painted in soft cream, the floors warm with sunlight in the afternoons. No more ghosts lingered in the corners. No more lies slept in the closets. Below, the magnolia trees were beginning to bloom early, small white blossoms opening like promises. Spring had come early this year, or maybe, for once, I'd come to meet it. Inside, a tabby cat named Rufus jumped onto the kitchen counter, meowing with practiced arrogance. I used to say I wasn't a cat person, but maybe I just hadn't had the space to become one. My mornings were simple now. Coffee from a French press, a newspaper spread across the table, the quiet hum of the world waking up outside my window. I no longer checked 2 phones. I no longer waited for footsteps that never came. I had gone back to work after everything unraveled, but within months I'd taken a chance, applied for a leadership role at a local architectural heritage firm. Gregory had always said I wasn't cutthroat enough for that kind of job. Turns out he was wrong. I got the position, and I was good at it. Better than good. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I took evening Italian classes downtown. It had started as a joke, a bucket list leftover, but I kept going. Not because I needed it, but because I enjoyed being bad at something again. Learning slowly, starting fresh. That's where I met Michael. He was one of the instructors, warm, self-deprecating, a single dad who always had chalk on his sleeves and stories about his son Leo. We didn't fall into anything fast. I was too careful. He was too respectful. But over time, he became a familiar rhythm, a safe space, someone who looked me in the eyes and never once made me feel like I had to guess what he was thinking. We'd go on walks after class, share gelato on his porch, talk about books, travel, grief, mistakes. He never asked for more than I could give, and because of that, I gave more than I ever thought I could again. One Saturday morning, we wandered through the farmer's market, hand in hand, and I realized I wasn't looking for shadows anymore. I wasn't listening for a voice that had lied. I was here, with someone real. Later that afternoon, I sat at my desk, flipping through a few old journals. Pages where I used to beg the universe for answers. Pages stained with tears and anger and the ache of not knowing. Now I knew everything, and somehow knowing hadn't destroyed me. The pain didn't vanish. It had simply reshaped itself into something quieter, something I could carry without breaking. Gregory was gone. Rachel was gone. And I was still standing. Not bitter. Not broken. Free. Outside, Rufus curled in a patch of sunlight on the windowsill, purring like a small, content engine. And inside me, something purred too. A soft, steady hum of peace. Sometimes, I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't overheard Rachel in the hallway that day. If I had just kept walking, trusting blindly, choosing not to know. Maybe I would still be married to a ghost. Maybe I'd still be sleeping beside someone who smiled with his mouth but hid with his soul. But I did stop. I did listen. And it shattered everything. But here's what no one tells you. Sometimes, breaking is the only way the truth can get in. The old me would have tried to forgive too quickly, would have clung to the memory of Gregory instead of accepting the man he truly was. I would have made excuses, swallowed pain like it was my fault. But I didn't. I let myself feel it, all of it, the humiliation, the rage, the loss, and then I let it go. Not because they deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved freedom. One afternoon, as I packed the last of Gregory's things for donation, old books, a pair of cufflinks, a mug that said "World's Best Husband" that now felt like a cruel joke, I found a note I had written him years ago. It was short, just 4 words, "Come home to me." I stared at it for a while, then folded it gently and dropped it into the donation box. He never really did come home. Not to me. And that's okay now, because I came home to myself, to the woman I had buried under compromise, to the voice I had silenced to keep the peace, to the dreams I'd postponed for a man who was never fully mine. Rachel still sends a message every few months, always polite, always indirect. I never respond. I don't hate her. I just don't owe her anything anymore. As for Addie, sometimes I see little girls her age in the park, and for a second I think of what could have been. But then I remind myself she has her family, and I'm building mine, in my own way, on my own terms. Michael and I are planning a trip to Umbria this fall. He says it's quiet and slow and soaked in good wine. I tell him I want to learn how to make pasta from scratch. He says he'll handle the wine. We laugh. We plan. And neither of us makes promises we can't keep. If you're listening to this and you're in the middle of your own heartbreak, whether it's betrayal, abandonment, or just the slow erosion of love, let me say this. You are not foolish for having trusted. You are not weak for having loved. But you are braver than you know for choosing yourself now. There is no shame in walking away. There is no failure in saying, "This is not enough for me." The greatest revenge isn't in what you say to them, it's in the life you build without them. One brick, one truth, one morning where you wake up and realize you are no longer waiting to be chosen, because you already chose yourself. And that, quietly, completely, is where everything begins again.